All right. Let's get this party started. How are you guys doing tonight? It is 11:40 p.m. and it has been a really good day today. If you watch my vlog from yesterday, you know that it was like really early in the morning, and what happened was I went to bed and then I woke up really early, and when I got back and I uploaded the vlog, I wasn't tired. I could not go back to sleep, you guys. This is part of the reason. I just stopped at the gas station and got a bottle of water. This is part of the reason why I don't go to bed super early, because if I do, then I wake up super early, and by 1 or 2 in the afternoon, I'm kind of exhausted. So I actually went and got, I went to Starbucks after I got my vlog rendering and uploaded, and Alex woke up for a minute. He's like, "Are you up already?" Because it was at that point it was 8:30 in the morning. I was like, "Yeah," and I said, "I don't think I can go back to sleep." I said, "I think I'm gonna go listen to my audiobook for a little bit." He goes, "Okay." So I went to Starbucks, and I wanted to get a tea, and so I ordered some citrus mint tea or something like that, but I ended up, they gave me, it was funny because in the book that I'm reading, right now, which is called No Exit, it's really good, by the way. It's about this girl stuck at a rest stop in a blizzard, and so anyway, they drink dark coffee, and then they call it dark, the dark roast. And it was so funny because I was holding my coffee cup as I was listening to it, and it said dark roast on it. I was like, oh, how apropos. So anyway, I ordered tea, but they ended up giving me coffee, so it was their mistake. But I didn't really care, because I was like, a coffee will do. I was happy with the coffee. So I drank my coffee, and I drove around, and I listened to my audiobook for a while. And then I went back home, and by that point, Alex was up, and we just kind of hung out for a little while. And then I was like, we were supposed to meet Sarah, his best friend, at Patashu for brunch at 2 o'clock. So and this was by this point it was 11:30 or something. I said, I'm gonna lay down for an hour now, I'm getting tired. See, that's what happens when I get tired. So I went back to bed for an hour, and then I got up and I got ready, and then we went to brunch, and we had a really great time at brunch, and it was packed there today. And then after brunch, we came home, and Alex went right back into his pajamas, and he has watched Netflix the entire day. And he's almost done with Grace and Frankie, I think, which I haven't even got to start watching again, but I love Grace and Frankie. It's one of my favorite shows on Netflix. So he has been just watching Netflix all day long. I had the book club live stream for The Stranger Beside Me about Ted Bundy. I had that today, and that was so much fun, and we had so many people in there. I think it's the most people we've ever had in the book club, and Mel co-hosted it with me, and it was such a blast. We had such a good time. So yeah. So that was that, and then after I got off there, I went and I had a couple errands I needed to go run, so I went and ran a couple errands, and came back, and then hung out with Alex some more, but he was just kind of really wanting to watch TV, I could tell. And so I finished this book that I was reading called Unlovable. Oh my god, it was so good, you guys. It's this graphic novel. There's 3 of them in the series, and it's about this girl named Tammy Pierce. Oh, I showed it on here, didn't I? And she's class of 89 to 90, 88 to 88, 88 to 89, 90 to 91, I think. She's a class of 92. And so she's the same age as I was when I was in high school. It's the same years. And there's so many pop cultural references that I totally are when I was in high school. And so I just love this book so much. Well, I finished the first one today, and then I started the second one. So I have read now 4 books. I'm an hour and a half almost out from finishing this book, which I started 2 days ago. So it's 5 books, and then I'll probably finish one more. Oh, no, that's wrong. 4, 5. I've read 5 books so far, 6. And then I have another audiobook that I want to finish because Maureen Johnson's Truly Devious sequel came out and I got it on Audible, so I want to start listening to that, and I'm so excited about that. So I'll probably finish that before the end of this week. And then James Patterson's The Quickie. So because my goal is to read 8 books a month, so that I can hit 100 by the end of the year. And if I finish all of that this week, then I'll have read 8 books this month. So, oh, I know what I did this afternoon. So, if you have Audible, Audible has a daily deal. If you miss this, you're gonna be pissed. If I had known yesterday, I would have put it on there because I didn't know and nobody told me. And I was like, when I got on there today, which I'm so thankful that I did. So Audible Everyday has, no, I'm not sponsored by Audible, but I wish I was. Audible Everyday has a daily deal, which is like $2.95 or $3.95. And it's just some random book. Some of them are like bestsellers. I mean, not current bestsellers, but some of them are like books that have been bestsellers. Some of them are just like random books that you've never heard of before. But I've actually found some really good books on there before that I had never like heard of. This Alan Eskin's book called The Life We Bury was like one of the greatest books ever. Like, he's one of my new favorite authors, and I got that off of the daily deal, and it's still on the daily deal. Well, it was today, but I think it's over now. But anyway, they had picked like maybe all of them from like, I don't know, from like the last 6 months or something like that. There were 14 pages, like web pages, 14 pages, and each page had like 8 books on it, something like that, and they were like selling them again. So like if they were a daily deal like in June for $2.95, you could buy it again for $2.95. So I went through there and I bought, are you ready for this? I bought 9 books for $30 on Audible. I mean, that is really a good deal. Because a lot of the audiobooks on there, like if you don't have, what do you call it, a credit, you can buy, like you get a credit every month, or I get 2 credits every month because that's the membership that I have. But you can buy 3 credits for $30, I think is what it is. So it's like $10 a credit, which is really a good deal because a lot of the books, if you don't buy a credit, are like $20 and $30. Now, I know there are places that you can get them online and stuff like that, and I have the library app, but often you have to like wait for it. I will say this. Audible is a lot easier to use too than the library app. But anyway, I bought 9 books today. Can you believe it? Oh my God. I was so excited. So anyway, well, that's not true because I bought 9 the second time for $30, and then the first time I bought the Maureen Johnson book, but I also bought another one. So I actually bought 10, 11 books today on Audible. My God. So yeah. And it was funny because when I was going through them, like a lot of them, it said, like, I was like, oh, I want to get that. And it said, in your library. And I was like, oh, I already own it. I already bought it and I haven't read it, or I haven't listened to it yet. So yeah, so that was fun. I did that. And, like, I've been reading like crazy this month. I've been really, like, there has not been a book really this month that I've read that I haven't enjoyed. And the discussion about The Stranger Beside Me today was really, really interesting, what people had to say. It was really fun. So if you participated in the live stream today, thank you for really making it cool. It was really fun to see that, like, we were keeping like 60 to 100 people in there at any given time to talk about a book club. Like, that was really fun. The book club now has 1,252 members in it. So very, very cool. And next month we are reading In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. We did a poll, and then like a lot of people had said that they had already bought the book. So I was like, we need to just stay with the book that we were going to read, and Mel agreed. And we decided, going further, in case you don't watch the BookTube videos, or you weren't in the live stream today, we've decided that we will not be changing the books anymore. So the book that we say that we're going to read, like, we've done it like 2 or 3 times, 2 times I think in the past, with books that we were going to read in December. But the book that we say that we're going to read is going to be the book for the following month, and that won't change. because I know that people like reserve it at the library and they like order it and things like that. So I'm really excited about it. And we came up with a project that we want to do this summer. So I don't know. We're thinking about doing, so there's readathons on BookTube, and I have been wanting to do a readathon, like come up with my own readathon for, like, since I've been on BookTube, I've wanted to come up with one. And so when I was talking to Mel today before the live stream, I was like, okay, I have an idea. And she was like, what? I go, what if, like, every year for the book club, we host, like, a readathon, you and I do. And then we, like, it'll have a theme to do with whatever our genre is. Because going forward, the book club will have a genre every year that we read. And so we're thinking about, this may not happen, because it's a lot of work to put a readathon together. We're thinking about doing, sometime this summer, late or fall, we're thinking about doing a readathon, the True Crime-a-thon is what we're thinking about doing. So, could be fun. Could be very fun. I'm excited. So yeah. I want Mel to start a BookTube channel. She has no desire. Mel, you need to start a BookTube channel. She reads so much. It was so funny because in the live stream today, I was like asking people like how many books they've read this month, or somehow it came up in a conversation. And everybody had like, well, not everybody, but there were a lot of people in there that had read already like 10, 12, 15 books this month. I was like, oh my God, I bet Tanya has read that much. She reads a lot. Tanya is like, obsessed with free books on Kindle right now. Do you guys read these free books on Kindle? Like, Tanya's obsessed with them. And last night she sat in the car and was it last night that I got her? She told me about like 3 different free books that she read, and she told me like the whole story to it. I was like, Tanya, why are you telling me this? So yeah, and then Alex was watching TV tonight. I took a nap with him crunching chips and slugging water next to me. Ugh, it slid so early already. Okay. So anyway, yeah, so I took a nap. Alex was eating chips and drinking water the whole time, but I was able to sleep through it. You guys, I had this horrible nightmare. I almost don't even want to talk about it because it kind of like really, really freaked me out. So, God, I'm like, do I want to talk about this or not? It like really freaked me out. I was in this apartment. And I feel like the apartment that I was in was like my grandma's old apartment back in the day. Like when I was a little kid. Except it was kind of set up differently. But like the outside of it, like the hallway, reminded me of my grandma's apartment. But anyway, but it was like on the first floor. And you just like walked in. Only one time did I have an apartment that was on the ground level and it wasn't set up like this at all. So anyway, but you guys, I had this nightmare and I woke up terrified and I was like, there was some like evil force like in the apartment trying to kill me, and I knew that. And everything in my apartment, like I came like out of this like stupor in my nightmare, and like everything in my apartment had been turned over, and there was like this doll on the floor that was like animated and like moving towards me, and Boo Radley was like on the couch. He was like the only dog there. I don't know why it was Boo Radley was the only dog there, but he was. And he was like on the couch, which was like to my left, and I knew that there was something like really like evil in the apartment, and it was dark and the lights were like going up and down and stuff, and I hadn't eaten right before this or anything, because I know like sometimes if you eat, like you have like these weird nightmares. It wasn't anything like that. Like I hadn't eaten or anything before this, and so I was like looking around on the floor and I was like trying to get everything I needed, and I got this, my fanny pack that I carry with me that has like my wallet and stuff in it, and I was like grabbing my car keys, and I knew that I had to get out to my car, and everything was like really dark, and I have like this coat with like this huge pocket in it, and I grabbed Boo Radley and I stuffed him in my pocket of my coat, and like at one point I started just like praying out loud, like really loud, and I was like, you know, like saying like, whatever evil forces in here, go away, go away, go away. And like like this light was like coming down, like this like peaceful light, but then it would like go away into darkness again. And okay, this is what's so weird. So then I got out to my car, but it wasn't my car. It was a red car. It was like an SUV, but it was like red. And I got into this red SUV, and which I've only ever had one red SUV. Like, I've always driven SUVs. It's only been, like, I've had only one that was red. And so anyway, I got in my car, and I, like, called my dad, and I was, like panicking on the phone. And I was like, Dad, I've got to come. And I, like, took Boo Radley out of my pocket and, like, put him on, like, the chair next to me. And I was like, Dad, I was like, I've got to come to your house and stay. I was like, this something horrible is going on, and I've got to, like, I need to be somewhere safe, blah, 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 whatever. And the thing that's really weird is I'm not Catholic, and in my dream, I was telling my dad to call, like, a priest. I said, can you please call a priest? Can you call a priest? Can you call a priest? And he was like, yeah. And my dad was really calm on the phone, and he was like, I know what's going on. I'm watching it right now on CNN. And I go, what are you talking about? And it was like weird. It was like I was talking to him, but like in my dream, I knew that like whatever I was going through was part of like the past, and he was watching something about it, if that makes sense. And he goes, yeah, I'm watching it right now on CNN. And I go, what are you talking about? You're watching it right now on CNN. And he goes, I'm watching a story about what happened to you. And it all started, okay, you guys, this is so spooky. So he said this in my dream, and I woke up literally like, I woke up and I was like, ah, like that. Because Alex was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, why? And he goes, you were just like moaning in your sleep. So I said to my dad, I go, what do you mean you're watching it on TV? And he goes, I'm watching the whole story about what happened to you. And it all started like a year ago when you went to that place called Fox Hollow Farms. And I like woke up. Like, is that not so freaky, you guys? And I think part of it is that I love reading this true crime stuff. I love talking about it. I love watching the shows. But I have to say, like, I talked about this the other night on here, that when I watched the Ted Bundy tapes, I got like weird vibes after it. And I didn't even really say it the way that it was, but like I got so creeped out watching it. But it was even more than that. I almost kind of felt like, it's kind of like why I don't really want to watch that Beast House or, Beast House or what, that's not what it's called, I don't think. That's a book that I read by Richard Lehman. The author of Endless Night. It's called Demon House or whatever that Zach Bagans sang, is because I've heard that like if you watch it, like you can take attachments away, and like I don't like that kind of stuff. Really does spook me. Like I really do believe that. And I have to tell you, like the only things that like if I'm watching like horror movies, like Michael Myers, like stuff kind of like that kind of scares me. Serial killer stuff does too, but like that kind of stuff really spooks me. And do you know my husband, like the only thing he will not watch is zombies. He like hates zombies. So anyway, I got like so freaked, and I just like laid there in bed for a couple minutes, and I was like, I don't know. But when I watched the Ted Bundy tapes the other night, this is why I kind of haven't like really continued watching them. Like I watched a little bit of it, and then I was like, I can only watch like 15 or 20 minutes of it at a time, because afterwards I get kind of like spooked walking upstairs, and I don't know. Does anybody else get weird watching stuff like that? So I think that's kind of probably where my dream came from. The fact that I was like thinking about like, you know, all of that weird stuff. Like, I don't know. You know, I talk about like being really like into like the light and the spirit and all that kind of stuff, but like at the same time, like I love to read about all the other stuff. I love to watch scary movies. It's almost kind of like it's like the same thing as like with sharks. Like sharks are my biggest fear in the entire world, but like I'm weirdly obsessed with sharks. Like I watch like Shark Week, I watch like all the shark movies. I've seen like every shark movie that's out there. I'm weirdly obsessed with all the shark stuff, and it's kind of the same thing. About like, you guys, I am definitely gonna fix this camera this week, I promise, because I know it's getting really annoying. But although not a lot of people have said anything about it, interestingly enough. But anyway, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, although I'm scared of sharks, I have this like weird fascination with them as well. Although did you guys see these videos that were going everywhere about these people? I think it was in Hawaii, and they swam with what was supposedly like the world's biggest great white shark, which didn't look as big as I thought it would, in all honesty, but it was still huge when they were swimming next to it, and I thought, they are crazy. I would never swim next to that thing. You want to talk about heart attack central? I would lose my mind. So yeah, that was my nightmare tonight. And Alex was like, well, tell me what your nightmare's about, babe. And I was telling him about it. He was like, I don't know why you read all that stuff if it bothers you. I'm like, well, I don't know why either, except for that I'm completely fascinated with all that stuff, and I watch it, you know? So yeah, so, okay, so there was that, and then that was it. That was my nightmare. It was weird, like, I was on my review channel, and somebody had commented on my review channel that that we had like common friends back in the day, and so they were like, it's good to see you on YouTube. And so I said, oh, hey, how are you? I was like, reach out to me. And I thought it was somebody who had actually ended up not being them. It was somebody else. And, but the friend that we had in common was my friend, Duke, that passed away years ago. And, it was so sad. It was interesting because they said overdose. Like, they said, oh, we had a common friend that, like, died of an overdose. But he actually took his own life. And, you know, I was thinking about that tonight. And I was like, I have lost so many friends, you guys. It's like, you know, I think about, like, all the people that I've known that I've lost, like, since I've been sober. But I was actually sober when Duke passed away. I had been sober for, I think I was in graduate school when he passed away. Had I graduated from graduate school yet? No, because, oh, wait a second. I might have. I'm like thinking, because like we lived in one apartment my first year of my master's program, and then my second year when I graduated, we lived in another program, or we lived in another apartment. And that was where I remember I came in because my friend, the one that I went to school with, like all the way through kindergarten and everything, like, you know, into college and graduate school, she had called, and I remember my boyfriend at the time, he said that she called, and he's like, you need to call her back. And I was like, and he just like looked at me really weird, and I go, what's going on? And he was like, you need to call her back. And I was like, did something happen? And like, he wouldn't tell me, but like, I just kind of had this really overwhelming feeling, like, and I said, and I said, what's it about? And she and I at that time, like, I wasn't seeing her as much as I had seen her before, like, because we were working, like, we were both working at different places, and we must have been out of school at that point, because I wasn't seeing her as much, and, he was like really the only friend that we had kind of still in common. And she had been somebody that like used to go out to the gay bars and stuff a lot, and she didn't anymore. She had stopped going out a lot. And I had actually, I must have been at sober. So he and I started dating when I was a year sober. And God, when would that have been? That's so weird. Okay. So I started working there in okay, so I started dating him in the end of 95, 96, 97, 98, 98, 99. Yeah. So that would have been when I graduated. And then that would have probably been the last year that we were together. And he and I had gone out the night before, and I had actually ran into my friend Duke and seen him. And then another friend of mine, who was actually somebody that was not sober, but like was a really good friend of mine that I had met through this girl that I was talking about. And when I first got sober, like he and I would go do stuff together because I didn't really have any friends that didn't use, and he didn't use at all, so he kind of kept me busy. He had actually given our friend Duke a ride home the night before, and I guess he had called my friend and said, like, yeah, he wasn't, like, he had talked to her too. Anyway, my friend had, like, had several attempts to take his life, and he ended up doing it. And but, you know, I've been thinking today about, like, it's weird to me, like, these people that I knew, like, so many people that I knew from back in the day when I was, like, out using and partying and stuff like that, you know, it's like, there's so many of them that are gone, that passed away later, you know, that I would, like, run into somebody, and I'd be like, oh, how's so-and-so, oh, they passed away, did you not hear? Oh, they, you know, they overdosed. And, I mean, it's so sad to me. And one of the things is that, like, after I got sober in Indianapolis, well, after I got sober in Indianapolis, like, crystal methamphetamine became huge here within the gay community. And, another trend, drug-wise, that I missed, kind of, that I think that I would have been just completely taken with. I just feel so blessed, you know, that I don't know. Timing's weird sometimes, you know, like, I say in my videos, I talk about addiction, that if I was using today, I'd be dead. I would be, because I think that I would have gotten hooked on, you know, I was somebody that ate a lot of pills. I would have got, I think, hooked on heroin after, like, having gone through pills, and I think I probably would be dead right now from it, you know? And I saw a lot of people, similar stories happen with crystal methamphetamine. Indiana, there was a time when Indiana was like a huge, huge state for crystal meth. Like, I mean, it was like every news story that you heard. And really kind of more country towns in Indiana. Like, it wasn't just in, like, Indianapolis. It was more like country towns, like, around Indianapolis. And you would hear these towns that were like there were so many people there that were just, like, hooked on it, you know? I don't know, and so it's weird to me then, and, like, to think, like, I mean, what would that have been? 20 years ago? You know, 25 years ago? Something like that? It's so weird to me. 20 years ago? So funny too, you know, like, I think he used to work at I told stories actually about him on here before, but he worked at a tanning bed salon back then. Do you remember we called them salons? Tanning bed salon back in the day. And he always had, like, bleach blonde hair and, like, was really super tan. And I would, like, call him up at work, and he would be, like, working. This was before I got sober, because we would go out together, and I'd be like, girl, are we going out tonight? And he'd be like, girl, you know it. You better slap a biscuit. He always said you better slap a biscuit on it. I don't know why, but, and like, he'd get in my car, and I always like have my heat up really high, you know? And he would say, like, you guys know, like, 'cause now I even say in my vlogs now, it's so hot in here, right? And he'd be like, girl, the cookies are done. He was like, it is hot in here. But we would always like coordinate our outfits. We were very like Madonna, Sandra Bernhard back in the day. And he'd be like, okay, girl, what we should do is we should both wear our khaki Gap pants out with our white one pocket tee. Do you guys remember this look? And then we would wear like a big belt, black belt, and like our black like combat boots. Or we would wear like jeans, you know, like this with like rolled up with like our combat boots and like a white t-shirt. Always like a white or black t-shirt. In the winter, like a good black turtleneck, you know what I mean? And then we would go out for the night. For a while, Duke dated this owner of this bar here in Indianapolis that was called NYC. It was like the best gay bar in Indianapolis for a long time, and he dated the owner there for like years. And we would go there, and I'd be like, girl, go get us a bunch of drink tickets. And he'd just go get us drink tickets, and then we would just get tanked, and we would dance on the boxes all night long. To like ABBA, Dancing Queen, and like the soundtrack of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Crystal Waters, 100% Pure Love. Very tragic though, and he would call me a lot, and he had actually had an attempt before all of this. He had had several attempts before all this, and he had like shot himself in the stomach years before I ever even met him. And as funny as he was, there was always like a sadness about him too, you know. And I think with people that are very humorous, or you know, just have like a natural sense of humor sometimes, I think it's such a coping mechanism that there's a lot of sadness there too, you know. It's weird, like when I think about him, like on those moments that he like truly had sadness, it's like it was so almost kind of out of character for who he was. And like I can remember he would call me a lot, you know, and be like, I'm just not doing good today. And I'd be like, well, what's going on, you know? And he would like talk to me and stuff like that. But it was so out of character for who he was that it like I you know. And I think this is what's sad with like our mental health system, you know, is like there's just like such misdiagnosis and lack of treatment options and things like that. And I do know that at the end he was like seeing I think he was seeing a psychiatrist, because he had told me something about being on a bunch of medication. I do remember that. But like when he was really like down, it was so like out of character for him that you just like really knew that there was like a deep sense of like sadness there about him. Such a bright spirit though, you know. I think about him sometimes, and I was thinking like when I saw that come up on the video today, I was like thinking to myself, I was like, yeah, it's been so long since he's been gone. It's like all of these things in my life that I've experienced that he never got to experience, you know? I've known quite a few people that have taken their lives, you know, before I got sober, after I got sober, and I've known a lot of people that are sober that take their lives, and I feel like, I don't know, it's just so sad, you know? And like the thing is that it leaves such a wake, I think, with the family members and friends in the way. And it's rare that I've met somebody or talked to like the family of somebody that will say, like, you know, I mean, most people that you talk to, I mean, I think there's not anybody out there that doesn't know this, that hasn't felt this on some level. Like, what could I have said? What could I have done differently, you know? And like whenever somebody I know, they're like have somebody close to them that like, you know, does that, they always are like, well, I wonder if there was anything I could have said or if there was anything that I could have done, you know? And, no, it just makes me sad. I wish you could give somebody hope, you know? We talk about, like, all of these things that we can... If I had enough money, I could buy this. If I had enough money, I could buy that. You think that we could figure out a way to give somebody hope, you know? It's one of the reasons why, like, I do talk about my sobriety so much on here, or my addiction. It is one of the reasons why I talk about, you know, all the things that I've learned in my life, or the things that, like, I've screwed up on and have been good learning experiences for me. It's one of the reasons why I do that, because I do want to give people hope. It's like one of the conscious decisions why I talk about my mother being sober and our using and our sobriety together, you know, is because I want people to have hope. It's one of the reasons why I talk about my grieving process, because I want people to have hope, you know, that they too can get through that. You know, like when I got on YouTube, like it was a decision. Oh, it's going to stop. Hold on. When I got on YouTube, you know, it was very much a conscious decision whether or not I was going to talk about my sobriety or not. And I just always have, you know, like when I worked in treatment, you know, from the time that I started as a tech to the time that, you know, I became a counselor and all the way through working there, you know, whatever. Excuse me. I had decided I was always going to share my story, you know, like that was something that was really important for me. And it's just something that I've always done since I was sober. And, you know, it's interesting because, like, my mom was very, very private with her sobriety. And, what is that noise? Oh, it's that car back there. My mother was very, very private with her sobriety. Like, she, I still hear it. It's not my car, though. You know, she would say things to me like, towards the end of her life, she wasn't as private about it. She would have talked about it. But, and we talked a lot, like, to people about, you know, being mother and son sober together and stuff like that. But she would say things to me like, oh, you know, people are judgmental. People don't need to know, blah, 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 whatever. I'm like, you parked your car in the front yard. You think people don't know that maybe that's a problem? And she'd be like, oh, you know, whatever. And one of her fears was, you know, that my mother was always like the stigma of women as alcoholics, which I have witnessed firsthand, you know. I mean, there's a stigma with being an alcoholic or an addict, period, you know. But I do think that there is definitely a stigma with women that are alcoholics and addicts. You know, it's like, I saw this in a movie sometime. The way that it was said was so perfect. I can't remember what it was said, but something about like, when a man has a drinking problem, he just needs to man up or pull it together. But when a woman has a drinking problem, isn't that so sad? Or something like that, you know, like that she's kind of like, I think there's like this stigma in society that a woman that drinks is like weak or something like that, you know. It just is, I don't know. And my mom always fought that. She always fought the idea that, you know, she was different, because she isn't. I mean, an alcoholic is an alcoholic. I mean, do I think that there are differences between women alcoholics and male alcoholics? Absolutely. I really, really do. You know, but not so much with their disease, but I think in how it affects them in certain ways and, you know, their histories. I mean, I think every alcoholic is different, but I don't think any of us is unique. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, we're not unique to the disease, but like our personalities and our backgrounds are different, you know. But I definitely think there's a stigma in society. And so, you know, my mom would say, even like, I think she probably, I don't know, let's see, she was sober just short of 13 years. I mean, it took a while. I'd say 8 or 10 years until she started comfortably. We would be someplace and she would say, oh no, I don't drink, I'm in recovery. Like, she would say that. Or if we were somewhere, we would like share our stories together, you know. Or she would say, you can share my story, I don't care. She would say that to me, you know. Like, that was like a long time, like 8 or 10 years before I think like a lot of the, like, the shame went away, you know. Because I do think that in our society, it's really changing. And I'll tell you where, I mean, this is the good thing that's coming from the oversaturation of the stories, the sad stories, okay? But like the saturation of the tragedy and seeing it everywhere and hearing about it everywhere and seeing it in movies and seeing it in TV shows. And it's almost like you can't watch a movie anymore without addiction playing some part into it. And I don't think anybody out there anymore really doesn't have a family member or a friend close to them that's been affected by addiction in some way, or they know somebody that has. Do you know what I mean? And I think this oversaturation of it right now, which is honestly, like, it's not like we have so many more addicts and alcoholics now than we did before. I don't think. I think it's just being more noticeable, you know, in the news and in pop culture. Well, there's a lot of sad stories out there, but the one good thing that comes from that is that I think it's normalizing it for people, and people are no longer like looking down on people. You know, it's almost surprising to me now. Like when I got sober, you know, for people to say, like, I have no tolerance for addicts or alcoholics, it's a choice, and, you know, whatever. Like that was common when I got sober. Like, that was really, I would say, like, the 80%. The 20% would say, well, 10% would say, you know, I just love them, I want them to be okay. And the other 10% would say it's a disease. You know what I mean? I would say it's switched now, you know, and 60 to 80% believe it's a disease and that it needs treatment and it needs to be treated appropriately. I'd say another 10% are like, we just want them to be okay and we love them. And I would say another 10 to 20% are like, listen, I have not got my glasses on, but I do have them with me, look. I keep my reading glasses in my car now. But in case we go into a restaurant, because I'm so tired of going to a restaurant, not having my reading glasses on and not being able to read the menu. But then I think there's a good like 20% probably of society that believes it is a choice and whatever. And you know, and I think the thing is that I always say this to people, like, I think people know that I firmly believe what I believe in, right? But that's also coming from the point of view that I worked in a treatment facility, you know, I was educated as an addictions expert, and that, you know, I'm in sobriety. Okay, those are three things, obviously, I'm going to believe it's a disease, you know what I mean? But I don't ever, like, I don't argue with people on it. Like, when people come to me and they're like, okay, like, you know, I don't believe that it's a disease, but, like, I really want to help my sister, you know, like, I'll get a lot of calls from, like, people that'll be like, oh, you know, like, friends of Alex, or friends of family members, or friends of mine will be like, you know, somebody will call me and say, like, do you care if I give so-and-so your number? Because, like, they, you know, their brother just went and, you know, got sober, and they want to know how to help him, and, like, I thought you'd be, like, a good person to talk to since you've been through it. And I'm like, yeah, have them give me a call, right? So I'll talk to them, and they'll just be like, well, I don't really believe that it's a disease. I believe it's a choice. And I'm like, okay, so you don't believe it's a disease. Now, I could spend an hour on the phone with these people convincing them that it's a disease, and they might get off the phone and not believe it's a disease. But this is what I always say to them. If they say that to me, they're like, listen, I'm not going to be able to believe that it's a disease. I'm like, okay, you don't believe it's a disease. Do you want to help your brother or sister? Like, do you love them enough that you want to help them? Yeah, but I'm angry at this situation. I'm angry at what's going on, you know? And I'm like, then that's enough. That's all we need to know, you know? And then what you need to do is you need to go find somebody. Let me help you find somebody to go get some professional help, or go to Al-Anon, or, you know? And, because we're affected by addicts and alcoholics in our lives, you know? This heroin shit in our country, I don't know the solution. I don't have a clue to what the solution is. You know, do I believe in prevention? Absolutely. Do I believe in abstinence? Well, of course I do, but I don't know how you teach that to people sometimes, you know, as far as like drug use, you know, I don't know what the answer is to it, you know, but it scares the hell out of me. And I'm telling you right now, it's killing a lot of people. And we gotta get it figured out in this country. We gotta get it figured out. You know, like, I would say 10 years ago, when I would hear of, like, somebody dying, right? Like, it would be, you know, like, I don't know, like, 30% of the time, it would be, like, heroin and opioids. You know, another 20 or 30% of the time, it would be, like, pancreatitis, or, you know, liver failure or something like that. And then another 30% of the time, it would be, like, they took their life or whatever, you know, something mental health related that was tragic and sad, you know, or a car accident, you know, related to drinking and driving or something like that. I feel like anymore when somebody calls me and they're like, did you hear that so-and-so, like, died. And I'm like, how? Like, if it's related to drugs and alcohol, I feel like it's 90% of the time, like, if not more, always heroin. And people that, like, I would never even know that used heroin. Like, that's what is, like, I don't know. It terrifies me. It absolutely terrifies me. So, yeah, I miss Duke. He was funny. He was a good friend of mine. I think it's hard, you know, like, when you look back on your life, it's like, I have, like, so Duke, and then, this really good friend of mine, he passed away, but he passed away from a disease that he had, that was like, he had it his entire life, and he and I were friends, like, way after I was sober, too. And I had known him, like, when I was younger. And then I had a friend of mine that died a couple years ago from meningitis. And, oh, he wrecked me. I still can't talk about him. I'll never forget my first time I ever gave a lead coming back in to recovery. He sat in the front row. He was so encouraging to me, you know. I remember when his mom called me and she said, God. You know, life is filled with so much joy, but it's also, there's a lot of loss. And I think that, you know, I always say it's the bitter and the sweet. Like, it's the really good times, but it's like the really sad times too, you know? And like, I look at him and like, I think like, he was just such a kind-hearted person. Like, he never did anything to hurt anybody. He was so good. He was so compassionate. He was so kind. And he's like somebody that to this day, like, when I think about like who inspires me to be a good person, like, he inspires me to this day to be a good person, you know? And I remember that his mom called me and she said, like, he went in the hospital and he was like sick, and then it was like literally overnight. Like, it was like, and it was like 3 years ago to like this month. He died like the first week of January. And she said, and I knew his mom real well too, and she said, you need to come and say goodbye. If you're good, she's like, you need to come and say goodbye. Like, I really, or no. She said, if you want to come and say goodbye, you can come today if you want, because, you know. And I was like, okay, like, I can see myself standing in the bedroom. And then, like, the dogs were there on the bed, and like, I got off the phone with her, and I just like stood there for a second. I was like, I can't believe I'm going through this, like. And I picked up the phone and I called Tanya, and I said, and Tanya knew him really well too, and I said, but she wasn't like a friend of his, like he was like of mine. And I said, I can't go say goodbye to him. I can't do it. And she said, Peter, he was a really good friend to you. You need to go say goodbye to him. And I said, I know that I need to, but like, I can't. And she said, Peter, he loved you. He was a good friend of yours. You need to go. And Alex wanted to go, but Alex had all this meetings and he couldn't get out of it that day. And so I went up there by myself, and I remember I walked in, and like, I walked into like where ICU was, and he was in the exact same room, you guys, that my mother had been in. And but before I got to the room, like, I walked by, like, they had this like room that was closed off, and it had like a window in it. And like, when I passed it by, I like looked in, and I saw his mom and like his brother, and they were like all sitting in there. And his mom, and I just kind of stood out there, and his mom came out, and like, such a woman of strong faith, you know, and she like gave me this huge hug, and I just melted, like, I just lost it. And I said, I feel like I should be the one that's strong for you, you know, like, I And she goes, no. She was like, we all help each other. You know, she was like, he loves you so much, Peter. She was like, he loves you so much. And, so she took me in there and like she had everybody get out of the room, so it was just he and I. I still to this day cannot believe that he is gone. Like I think about him all the time. It just feels like yesterday. I do not take life lightly anymore. When, you know, one second somebody's laughing and the very next, I'd just been with him the week before, you know, one second you're laughing with somebody and telling stories and driving around, and the next second they're gone, you know. Alex knows, so Alex knows this guy's best friend from high school and college. They went to the same college together too, but high school. His friend, but Alex knows her from a different way. And so, like, I knew her through my friend, and Alex knew her from somewhere else. So we saw her at the mall with her husband not too long ago, and she's pregnant. And I said he would have been so excited for you, you know, like, and she said, well, we're going to use his name as a middle name. And I was like, he would have loved that. That's so cool, you know? We sit here and we talk about, like, how short life is and that life isn't a dress rehearsal, and I say all this kind of stuff, but, like, I think people just don't get it sometimes. Like, it really is. And, like, when you go through a lot of loss, you know, it's like, like, I've only in my life had relationships like that I would count, like serious relationships with, like, the 3 since I've been sober, which are my long-term relationships. And then before that, Todd, who I found out passed away, Jack, who passed away, and one other person. 2 other people, but one of them, like, was like when I first came out. So 2 out of like 6 or 7 boyfriends of mine are dead. Like, it's so, God, it's just weird to me, you know? And all of them from, like, weird things. I mean, not weird things, but like things that you wouldn't expect, you know? Anyway, you know, I think one of the things to take from all of that is that, like, all of these people that I'm talking about tonight, you know, were, like, such vibrant, colorful people, you know, they just, like, so much fun to be with, and just so compassionate and kind, and just filled with, like, joy, you know, like, Todd was a musician, and Jack was a painter, you know, and Duke was just hilarious. I mean, oh my God, you just couldn't even sit with a straight face with him for 5 minutes, you know. And my other friend that I was just talking about is just one of the, I mean, literally, hands down, like, one of the kindest people I have ever met in my entire life, you know. And I look at all of that and I think, like, if they collectively had a message to give to me, what they would say is, don't take life for granted, you know, like, just don't. And enjoy every moment of it, and live it to the fullest, and be the best version of yourself that you can be, and don't look back, and learn from your mistakes, and, you know what I mean, like, you know, make the most out of life. I think they would really say that. And I mean, these were people that lived. They lived lives, you know. God, how weird. Fox Hollow Farms to me, like, bawling my eyes out. I have not cried that hard on here in a long time. I feel better. You know, it's interesting because, like, every once in a while, like, do you ever, like, randomly, like, Duke's a good example of this, like, I mean, it's been 20 years, so, like, it'll take something, like, a story to come up where I'll, like, think of him, you know, like today, but every once in a while, like, just out of the blue, something will happen, I'll be thinking about, you know, somebody, one of these people, or my grandma, or, you know, my Aunt Kathy or something. It's, like, just out of the blue, you know? Do you ever wonder if in moments like that, they're, like, around us? Like, if in that moment, like, they're around us somewhere? I kind of like to think that way. Do you know what I mean? Maybe that's why we're thinking about him in that moment. When you think about, like, the spiritual world, or, you know, what's out there, you know. I mean, I think about this not just with the spiritual world, but with, like, you know, aliens and just everything, you know, the magic of the universe, just anything that you could possibly put into this category of who knows it could possibly be. There's so much more that we don't know than those things that we're sure of. Well, good to report that I haven't had any tooth pain. My jaw hurt a little bit earlier today, but I wouldn't say tooth pain. I can chew. I can bite down. I think the antibiotic has really helped a lot. And yeah, so I feel so much better. I wouldn't say 100% better, but I would say I feel like 90% better. I have my deep cleaning on Wednesday, which incidentally is also supposed to be the coldest day that we're going to have in Indiana in 2019. It's supposed to be like -7, which means it'll probably be like -20, which I don't know the last time we've had sub-zero weather temperatures like that. Like, that is really cold in Indiana. Like, it gets cold, but the wind chill factor here is what gets really cold. But we haven't had temperatures like that in a long time. I guess it's supposed to be cold, like, all across, like, a lot of the country this week, like, really, really cold. So, that ought to be a lot of fun, don't you think? Get warm. So basically, I'm going to go from the dentist to going home and being miserable. No. She said it shouldn't be that bad. She's like, you'll be fine, like, when I'm done. She's like, now you're going to want to get your videos done first. She's like, because you're not going to want to go home and film videos. She's like, but you shouldn't hurt that bad. And I was like, okay. And I have my training appointment tomorrow, which I am going to. And yeah, so I'm actually kind of hungry right now. I don't know why, and I don't know what I'm hungry for. Do you guys ever get like that? Like, you get hungry, but you don't really know what you want? Like, like, as I've been driving around, I've kind of been, like, looking at food places. I'm like, I'm kind of hungry, but I know that I don't want fast food, but I don't know what I want. I'm gonna turn around here instead of going all the way. Invisalign well tonight. I was kind of, like, surprised I cried that hard. My God. Felt good though. I feel, do you ever, like, really just have, like, a good cry and you feel good, you know, like you feel like kind of cleansed a little bit? Do you ever, like, if you're a vegetarian, you'll relate to what I'm probably going to say, or you'll probably relate to what I'm going to say. you miss like things, like places, but you don't necessarily miss eating meat. Like I don't necessarily miss eating meat, but weirdly, I kind of miss Arby's. Like I don't even know how to explain it. Like I think if you put a roast beef sandwich in front of me, which is like from Arby's, so if you guys, it's gonna stop, hold on. So if you guys don't have an Arby's where you live, Arby's is like home of the original roast beef sandwich, and which, by the way, I used to love back in the day. They have this horsey sauce. It's like horseradish sauce, but it's called horsey sauce. And I would just like put it all over. The sandwich was so good. And then I get potato cakes and a Jamocha shake. Oh my God, set you free. But anyway, like I think if you put like a roast beef sandwich in front of me, I'd be like sick. Like there's like no way I could eat it right now. But there was just something about Arby's that sounds good to me. I don't know what it, like I could eat potato cakes. That does sound good to me. And a Jamocha shake. Arby's is really expensive fast food. It's 18 degrees outside right now. I really like this book that I'm reading, but like it just got kind of predictable right before I stopped it and started vlogging, and I was like, don't you hate when books get predictable or movies? And you're like, I totally saw that coming from a mile away. And this is kind of where I'm at with it, right? Like I'm not saying like it's the easiest thing in the world to do, like just to pull some kind of idea, you know, out of thin air and like put it in your book or movie, but it's like, why pick the most like unoriginal idea, you know? Like I'm in this book and it's like, this book is literally a nail biter, okay? I mean to tell you from the beginning. So if you guys want to know what it is again, in case you want to buy it, it's called No Exit, and it is by Taylor Adams. And it has nothing to do with the existential play No Exit. But it is literally a nail biter. I mean, from the word go, like it is. Now, some of the language, like I said, I don't care for, but it's like really like right off to the start. It's like gets right into it, and you're like, okay, here I'm going on this ride, right? And it's really fast paced, and I love it. But I just. It like up to this point, I mean, there's been things that I've thought, okay, this is going to happen or that's going to happen, but I didn't necessarily, I wasn't sure. But then something that happened, I was like, this is so predictable. I hate predictable shit like this. I also feel like though that there are no original ideas anymore. Not that Walgreens there had a sign and it said 24-hour pharmacy, and then underneath it said located at, and that location is literally like 20 minutes from here. It must be for people that need to like, there used to be back in the day all kinds of 24-hour pharmacies. There aren't anymore. So many of the things I see driving around at night that I like, that I wouldn't like, that if I just was driving by here through the day, like I wouldn't notice, like different restaurants and places, and I always go, like I'd like to go there, and then I never do. Like I always forget about it later, you know? There was this little coffee place up here. Do you guys remember that one night that I drove by the little coffee place and has pastries inside? Like that was one of them that I thought would be like kind of fun to stop at. And, but like this isn't somewhere that I would be during the day. Like at night, sure, I'm like driving over here, but during the day, like I wouldn't be over here for any reason. I guess unless I was just driving around, but I do that at night. I don't do that during the day. I just got a crave. Okay, I think this is what I want. A peanut butter sandwich, but like, I don't want to go and buy a loaf of bread and peanut butter. But I don't like peanut butter and jelly. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I crave peanut butter and jelly, but typically I just like peanut butter or peanut butter and honey. I want a peanut butter, maybe a peanut butter and honey sandwich. And then, for some reason, cottage cheese, like really hard-packed cottage cheese. Can I have that? I don't know. I haven't had that since I've been a vegetarian. I'd have to look on the labels. And then, like an apple. Sounds really good. Alex has some green apples in the fridge because he asked me to buy them for him, so I bought them for him. He made like a little apple and cheese plate one night. I'll be like, do you want any like treats to watch this like show? I'll call him like from the grocery store and he'll be like, no. Well, I mean, like, can you give me some low-fat mozzarella string cheese and then some green apples? And I'll be like, oh, okay. I'm like, you don't want any like potato chips? And he'll be like, oh no, like potato chips? Who? No. Do you want any candy? Oh no. He acts like that. And then the next day he eats like an entire bag of like pizza rolls. My mom used to tell this story that when she and my dad were first started dating, like, well, not when they first started dating, but like in the early years. My mom and my aunt lived together, right? And so like on a Saturday night, they'd be like sitting there watching TV or whatever. And so my mom and my dad would like go to like White Castle and they would like be like, Kathy, do you want any White Castles? And my Aunt Kathy would be like, oh no, gross, those are disgusting. So if you don't know what White Castles are, if you're in the South, they're like Crystals. They're like the original home of the slider, okay? I love them. They have these impossible sliders that literally, like if I want a cheeseburger, it's where I go. Because they taste like a cheeseburger, but they're plant-based. They're fantastic. But they've just had those like in the last year or two. Last year, I think. But their original sliders are like so good. And back in the day, they were like 20 cents. Now they're expensive, but like, I mean, not expensive, but they're like $1 something for like a slider. But they have like a Crave case that you can get, like this cardboard case that has all of the, anyway. So my mom and my dad would get like, you know, French fries and like shakes and like whatever from White Castle when they come home. And my Aunt Kathy would start eating them. And my mom would be like, oh, I thought you snubbed your nose at them, that you thought that they were disgusting. You didn't want any of them. And my aunt would be like, oh, I'm just having one. She would eat like 3 of them, my mom said. Tanya loves White Castle's breakfast. It's so funny though, because I'll be like, sometimes we'll be like driving around and I'll be like, do you want anything before we go home? And she'll be like, yeah, could you take me through White Castle? Like, I'm gonna get something for Eric. Like, I'll get him I'll get him White Castle and I'll get one, whatever, too. So I'll pull through there. Now, let me just tell you, okay, back in the day, like when I was thinner, not when I was heavy, but like when I was heavy too, before I was a vegetarian, I could easily eat, okay, like 6 White Castle sliders, easily, okay? And potato chips, I was gonna say. They have onion chips there that are fantastic. Mozzarella sticks, all of it, right? We'll go through there and Tanya will be like, I'll have 2 White Castle cheeseburgers and a small French fry. And I'm like, and the small French fries come in this little box like this. And I'm like, is that all? And she's like, yeah, 1 for me and 1 for Eric. That's all we need. And I'm like, 2 White Castles for 2 people? What? That is not eating, okay? Which is why I look like this. Because I'm a quantity eater, not a quality eater. I am an emotional eater, though. I eat when I'm happy and I eat when I'm sad. And that's the truth right there. Like, I really do. Like, if I'm, like, really excited or happy, like, I can eat. And if I'm really sad, I can eat, too. And if I'm not feeling any emotions, I can eat. My favorite thing at the moment, well, this has been going on for a while now because it drives Alex crazy. Because every time he comes in the house, the TV is always set to Game Show Network. But I love to sit there and eat and watch Family Feud. And I shout the answers out. Alex is like, why don't you go on that show? And I'm like, because it's me. It would be me and Caroline. He's like, oh, no, he always goes, why don't you, like, get your side of the family to go on that show, and we'll get our side of the family, I'll get my side of the family to go on the show, and we can go in there and battle each other. I'm like, yeah, because it's me and Caroline. You can't have Family Feud with 2 people. We have some other family members that I don't talk about on my vlog, because they would prefer to stay private, but yeah, they don't need to be on. Oh my God, I wish Caroline was here right now. We'd be dying laughing. I think I talked about this on here. This woman and this man, they were probably like in their 70s. They were so nice, right? They came in, I'll never forget this man, because he like went right in and like, this is at a funeral home, but like in the back, like was like the family area. And he like went back there and got himself a cup of coffee and everything. I'd never seen this man before in my entire life. And so nice. So they were both so nice. And so Caroline and I were standing at the door of my aunt's funeral, right? The viewing. And so they came up to us and they're like, Caroline, I'm so sorry, and all this kind of stuff. And then they said, are you Mike, Caroline's husband? And I was like, no, I'm Peter, and you know, Kathy was my aunt. And they go, oh my God, we didn't get to come to your mom's funeral because we were out of town. And I was like, okay. And Caroline and I were just standing there, and they're like, we were your mom's aunts, and we grew up with your moms, and they used to come and stay with us in the summers, and we used to always like hang out and play together and stuff like that. They were telling us all these stories. It was so weird. And then they were like, we need to get together. And I told Caroline, I said, and she could care less. And I was like, I want to get together with them. I want to find out more about them, and I want to hear more about our moms when they were growing up. Caroline was like, yeah, I guess that would be kind of fun. Caroline always says that kind of stuff, but then she doesn't care. I'm like, Caroline, don't you want to know about our family history? That she's like, yeah, I guess. I used to always say to her, like, you need to ask your mom this and you need to ask your mom that. And she'd be like, no, like, why do you care? Blah, blah, blah. And now that her mom is gone, and she'll say, oh, don't you wish that we would have asked our moms this question? And I'm like, yeah, I did. And I asked your mom questions too, because I wanted to know that stuff. Well, besides those two cousins that we didn't even know existed until my aunt passed away, they're like distant cousins. I mean, not like third cousins. They're like first cousins, but like I'd never heard of these people before in my entire life. And it was like brother and sister. And they were so nice. What was weird was that the one woman kind of looked like my grandma. Or the woman. It was like two women and a man, but like it was the man's wife. And then it was like a brother and a sister. And she looked like my grandma, kind of, a little bit. The woman that was, like, my mom's cousin. They were, like, older cousins. So they would have been, like 5 years, 6 years older than our moms. But anyway, they were so sweet. What was I going to say? I don't remember what I was going to say. Something about my aunt. Shoot, what was I going to say? Wiggle your toes, Peter. Supposedly it sets off neurons in your brain and you'll remember. What were you going to say, Peter? Look at my hair sticking up in the back. Oh, I know what I was going to say. See, that does work. If you wiggle your toes, it sets off neurons in your brain and it supposedly will help you remember things. But before my aunt passed away, she was like, that we knew of, like other than like cousins and things that didn't know family history, she was the last living person on like my mom's side of the family, like that they like all grew up like together, extended family and stuff like that. And once she was gone, like that, the stories went too. And I started like at the funeral home, I started asking. Well, my aunt, it was the viewing was in a church. But I asked, they had like this little, coffee area in the back. But I started asking this couple, or this man and woman, some questions. And they like didn't remember a lot. But that's when they were like, we should get together. And I was like, yes. I said something to Caroline not too long ago. It was like a month ago. I said, every once in a while, it's really weird. Caroline will find something and she'll send it to me randomly. And she'll be like, do you know about this? And it'll be like some little snippet of a story that I heard like something about when I was like 15. Because my mother, like my aunt wouldn't tell a lot of stories from when she was growing up. But my mother did. My mother was like the storyteller. Like she always was telling stories about when she was growing up and things that happened. But the thing with my mom was that she would like, I mean, like I found out later from my dad that like my mom didn't want like Caroline and I thinking poorly of like my grandma. So like which we didn't, and I wouldn't have, but like, so we only got like bits and pieces of like how the story really went, if that makes sense, you know, and I'm not just talking about the stuff that I've talked about with my grandma before, but like we would only get like, hold on. Don't go. I would only get bits and pieces of the story, right? And then my mom would be like, well, I don't really remember it, and you know, like this so-and-so, or that so-and-so, or she would say like an aunt's name, and it was like she would get like the aunts mixed up. She'd be like, I really don't remember, Peter, if it was this aunt or that aunt. And after my mom passed away, and after I had talked to my dad about some of the stuff with my grandma, I sat down and I talked to my aunt, actually this restaurant right up here at Sullivan's, which is really weird. And I said to my aunt, we were there for lunch one day, and I said, can I ask you some questions? And she was like, yeah. And she got real frustrated with me, and I said, Aunt Kathy, I don't have this history. I don't know any of these things if you don't tell me, and it's important to me. I want to know these things. So she started telling me some of it, and she's like, your mom got it wrong. Like, your mom didn't remember how it like went when we were really young. And, but like even my aunt at one point was just like, okay, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And she wouldn't talk about it anymore. And what was weird was, after she was gone, Caroline asked her dad about a lot of the stuff that I knew, that I had told Caroline about, that my aunt had told me, and my mom had told me. Well, my mom never told me that my grandma went to prison, but my aunt did tell me that after my dad did. So Caroline's dad didn't know any of it. Like, her mom hadn't told her dad any of that stuff. I don't know. I don't know that it really matters, but like sometimes Caroline and I are like, it'd be kind of nice to know our family history, you know, maybe it would make sense. A lot of it makes sense, you know, that they were brought up very, very poor, and you know, there was a part where they were in foster care and that they were separated. I mean, those are things that we know now that we didn't know then, and a lot of it makes a lot of sense, you know, and you know, the part about them being separated from foster care, we just learned that like in the last year sometime, because that was something that I thought, like, they were fostered out. My mom would say we were fostered out, and I'd be like, fostered out, what does that mean? And she would say, like, we were fostered out to like family members in the summer. And she would say, because like our parents were too poor to take care of us. And I was like, is that like when your dad was still alive? Because my mom's dad died when she was 4. And she would be like, I don't remember really. And then like I talked to my aunt was like, we were not fostered out, we were in foster care. And I was like, why? And she was like, because our parents were too poor, which I think is weird. Like, why would your kids be in foster care because your parents were too poor? Like, see, that doesn't make any sense to me. So I kind of wonder about some of that stuff, you know. But then they lived with her later. And see, my mom always, my dad had said that my mom told her that, my dad thought my grandma had gone to prison when my mom was really young. Oh, my battery just started going. But my aunt said, no, it was when my mom was graduating from high school and going into college. And that's why my aunt became her guardian. The whole thing is it's a mystery of its own, and I don't think I'll ever know any of it to me, but it's really interesting to me. Do any of you out there have kind of like family histories that are a little different like that you would really like to know? You know, I would like to know that stuff. Anyway, well, listen, I'm going to get off here now because the battery is flashing at me. So I hope you guys are having a wonderful week back to work, and it's Monday, and I hope you are warm wherever you are, and yeah, I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.